Perhaps you could tell me a little bit about just war, the theory of it.
Well, this is a very old concept. Most major traditions have some notion of justice and how that might relate to the business of war. It's present in most major religious traditions. And certainly this is true of the Christian tradition. It is true of the Judaic and, for that matter, the Islamic tradition. But it's fair to say that the concept was most highly developed in the Christian tradition from about the 5th, 6th to the 13th, 14th centuries. And cutting a long story short, it came to its most sophisticated expression in the work of, widely regarded as one of the theological gurus of the Christian era, Thomas Aquinas. And the idea is very simple, although its detail is very complex. But the fundamental idea is that war may be justified in certain circumstances. It could be, in other words, just. To be just, the cause must be just, and the means used in war must equally be just. So unless cause and means are just, then the war is not just. Now, Aquinas was of course, he was very erudite, but he was also very clever. And he didn't like war terribly much. So he put the hurdles very high, but based on very detailed and sophisticated ethical reasoning. So he would ask, how could the cause be just unless you've really thought about it? It can't be a whim. It can't be a sheer assertion. It can't be, I don't like the look of the other person. And it must be subject to rational thinking and therefore rational discussion. You have to be able to demonstrate rationally that the cause is just. That, of course, makes it very difficult to establish that beyond reasonable doubt. But the cause cannot be just if it's doomed to fail. So then you must be able to establish a high probability that the just cause will be successful. And in the absence of such high probability, it is unjust. Otherwise, human beings are being used as pawns. And the consequences of the war must be good. Of course, human beings are not gods, but they have to make an assessment of foreseen and foreseeable consequences. And they must therefore be reasonably confident that the foreseen and foreseeable consequences will be good and must, by a good margin, outweigh the bad consequences. In the absence of all those things, which of course he goes into more detail and more sub-conditions, then the cause is not just, and then that's the end, you can't do it. But the means must be just. And therefore, civilians must be spared at all costs. Where this is not possible, you don't do it. You can't say, this is a target, it's a military target, and to use modern language, though he didn't use that language, the rest of it is unintended collateral damage. That cannot be. You have to go into the detail and establish to your confidence that civilians will, by and large, be spared. And of course, it follows from what the cause must be, the cause which must be just. And there's only one cause which is just at the end of the day, to go to war. One cause, to defend against unprovoked attack where innocent people are in danger. Innocent people in danger, unprovoked attack, you are entitled to defend the innocent people under attack. But you can't defend them on the principle, on the basis of anything goes. You have to take all these other precautions to limit the damage inflicted by war, both on your side and on the side of the opponent. And he didn't go into this because it was, after all, an earlier era and the wider damages that may happen to a wider international community. So from that, we have developed the theory of jus ad bellum, which means just cause, and jus in bello, which means just means. And this has been developed and refined over time and remains the crux of the just war theory, which I think is proving to be increasingly losing its relevance in the modern era, assuming that it was a useful and legitimate step in thinking creatively about war and peace at a certain time in the historical journey of the human species. But it may be less so now.
And why is that, do you think? Why might it be less so?
Well, it's less so now. Well, for a number of reasons. The first and the most obvious is that the modern period has seen the development of what the famous French social theorist Raymond Aron has labeled the idea of total war and the total weapon. Total war, in the sense which is prefigured by World Wars I and II, that you're now getting to a position where war can easily lead, and we can just think of the causes that led to the two world wars, from very small incidents to begin with, and then following a few steps, conflagration. In the case of the Second World War, well over 60 million casualties. So we are not just dealing with A and B attacks A takes some defensive measure against B. We're now dealing with a situation which easily escalates and can encompass really the totality of the planet. And take us further along that road is the total weapon, the nuclear weapon, which, were it to be used, even by 5% of existing capability, would lead to horrendous result of perhaps 2,000 million casualties and certainly drastic climate change. That's 5%. Between 5 and 10% of the world's nuclear capability. So we're now seeing an altogether different game that we have to contend with, and rationality and ethics has now to contend with and concern itself with this vastly different cultural, political, and ethical landscape. And maybe the ideas which have been developed in previous generations and centuries need to be rethought, and the concept of justice needs to be rethought as it applies to this particular set of conundrums. What I've just said is only a small part of the total picture. It's not just that war has globalized and that we now have a global weapon which can have global consequences. It's that the world is so interdependent. So you'd have to think about all the other implications of war: economic, cultural, social, and ecological. Aspects which were not given particularly close attention in an earlier era, but are now part and parcel of life as we know it. So we need to have a much more complex understanding of what security means in today's world than perhaps we needed to in 14th, 13th, 15th century Europe.